Nobody on Station Eryndor trusted the predator cubs. Not after the attacks. Not after the footage spread across the trade. Networks showing full-grown Khelar hunters tearing through pirate ships like living shadows, 8-foot-tall predators. Black fur reinforced with natural armor plating. Silver eyes capable of seeing through darkness. Claws sharp enough to carve through steel doors. Entire military divisions feared adult Khelar, so when 3 Khelar cubs suddenly appeared inside the civilian district of Eryndor Station, panic spread instantly. Shops closed early. Security drones tripled patrol routes. Autocrants pulled children indoors. And every station announcement repeated the same warning over and over. Citizens are advised to avoid all contact with the predator juveniles until retrieval teams arrive. Most people listened. One human woman didn't. Her name was Mira Tanaka, 32 years old, owner of a tiny tea shop, hidden between a repair garage and an old cargo elevator deep inside Market Ring 6. The shop barely earned enough credits to survive. But people loved it anyway, mostly because Mira treated exhausted workers like family, freighter pilots, mechanics, cargo haulers, lonely travelers. Everybody eventually found themselves sitting inside her warm little tea shop, at least once, especially during station storms. Eryndor's outer shields constantly vibrated during plasma weather, making the entire station hum softly at night like distant thunder. And during those nights, Mira's shop became one of the few places that still felt peaceful. Warm lights, soft music, the smell of herbs, and boiling tea leaves. A small corner of calm inside a noisy galaxy, which explained why the cubs found it eventually. The first cub appeared during closing hours. Mira nearly dropped an entire tray when she spotted movement near the doorway. 2 glowing silver eyes stared at her from beneath one of the empty tables, tiny, unblinking. Watching carefully, at first she thought it was some kind of station animals. Then the creature stepped forward, and Mira froze. Khelar cub. Dark fur, massive paws. Sharp little claws clicking softly against the floor. The cub couldn't have been older than a few months. But even at that age, predator instincts surrounded it like electricity. The station warnings immediately echoed through Mira's mind. Dangerous. Aggressive and avoid contact. Instead, the cub sneezed, then stumbled sideways from exhaustion. Mira blinked. Oh no. The cub looked terrible up close, then weak. Its fur was dirty with dust and oil stains, while one paw dragged slightly behind the others, injured. And judging by the way it stared at the steaming kettle behind the counter, hungry, very hungry. Mira slowly crouched. The cub immediately tensed. Tiny fangs visible now. Fear. Not aggression. Fear pretending to look dangerous. Mira knew the feeling surprisingly well. She carefully slid a small bowl of warm water across the floor. The cub watched suspiciously for several long seconds, then slowly approached. Every movement cautious, ready to run instantly. The moment it reached the bowl, it drank desperately. Like it hadn't found clean water in days, Mira's chest tightened painfully. Because monsters weren't supposed to look this helpless. You're not supposed to be here, she whispered softly. The cub ignored her completely while drinking. Then something unexpected happened. Mira poured herself fresh tea while continuing cleanup behind the counter. A simple herbal blend, warm milk, honey. The rich smell filled the little shop almost instantly. The cub's ears twitched. Then slowly, it walked toward her, carefully, curiously. Mira sat perfectly still, while holding the steaming cup. The tiny predator stopped beside her chair and sniffed the air cautiously. then looked directly into her eyes, and sneezed again. Mira laughed before she could stop herself. A tiny surprised sound escaped the cub immediately afterward, like it had never heard laughter before. Very carefully, Mira lowered the warm cup slightly closer. "Smells good, right?" The cub leaned forward, sniffed the steam again, and relaxed, just a little. That tiny moment changed everything. Because 10 minutes later, 2 more cubs crawled out of the ventilation ducts. Apparently the first one had friends. Mira stared in disbelief as the other cubs cautiously entered the tea shop. One larger than the others, one tiny enough to fit inside her arms completely. All 3 looked exhausted, cold, hungry, and somehow deeply nervous despite being literal predator species. The first cub chirped softly toward the newcomers, almost like introducing her. Mira sighed slowly. "Oh, this is definitely becoming a problem." The smallest cub immediately walked directly toward her boots and curled beside them. Traitorously adorable behavior. Mira lost the battle instantly after that. Over the next several days, the cubs kept returning. Every night, always after station traffic quieted. They never damaged anything, never acted aggressive. Mostly they slept near the heaters, while Mira worked quietly around the shop. And every single night, Mira made tea. Not for the cubs exactly. Khelar biology definitely shouldn't consume caffeine. Probably, but the cubs loved the warmth, the smell, the calm atmosphere. Eventually they began following Mira around the shop constantly. One slept near the tea shelves. Another guarded the front entrance proudly despite being smaller than a backpack. The tiniest cub became obsessed with sitting directly in Mira's lap whenever she brewed evening tea. Customers started noticing eventually. Reactions varied dramatically. Some panicked instantly. Others became strangely fascinated. A few quietly stopped visiting altogether. But many workers simply stared in confusion. Because the terrifying predator cubs everyone feared were peacefully sleeping inside a tea shop, while a human woman scratched behind their ears casually. Then station security found out. Which was inevitable, honestly. Commander Vale arrived personally one evening surrounded by armed officers and floating drones. The tea shop fell silent immediately. Customers backed away nervously. The cubs woke instantly. And for one dangerous second, everybody expected violence. Instead, the smallest cub climbed directly into Mira's arms. Hiding, Commander Vale stopped walking. "They trust you." Mira looked down at the trembling cub pressed against her chest. "I think they're scared. They're Khelar predators. They're children." The commander remained silent. Because technically, she wasn't wrong. Station records eventually uncovered the truth. A damaged smuggling ship passed through Eryndor weeks earlier carrying illegal exotic cargo, including stolen Khelar cubs. The smugglers abandoned them during a customs inspection and escaped before authorities noticed. The cubs survived alone inside maintenance tunnels, afterward, hiding, stealing scraps, avoiding everyone, until one night, they smelled warm tea and followed it. Commander Vale ordered immediate transport arrangements for the cubs to a secure wildlife sanctuary. Officially. But when retrieval teams finally arrived, the cubs refused to leave Mira completely. One hissed at handlers approaching too quickly. Another physically blocked the doorway. The smallest cub wrapped itself around Mira's arm stubbornly and refused to move. The retrieval specialists looked increasingly confused. "Khelar cubs don't imprint this easily," one muttered. Another stared toward Mira carefully. "What exactly did you do?" Mira blinked. "I gave them tea?" The explanation turned out stranger than anyone expected. Khelar cubs bonded heavily through environmental memory during early development. Warmth, safety, scent recognition, calm emotional spaces, and because the cubs spent their first peaceful nights inside Mira's tea shops. Their instincts identified her as safe, family safe. Which among Khelar was apparently permanent. The station's xenobiologists became obsessed with studying the phenomenon. The media became worse. News networks flooded Eryndor within days. Headlines exploded everywhere. Human tea shop ogre accidentally adopts predator cubs. Feared Khelar refused to leave human woman. The tea lady of Eryndor. Mira hated every second of the attention. The cubs loved it, especially because visitors kept bringing gifts afterward. But everything truly changed during the station blackout. A month later, a massive plasma storm crippled Eryndor's power grid unexpectedly. Entire sectors lost heat instantly. Emergency systems struggled. Panic spread fast, especially in the lower civilian districts, including Market Ring 6. Mira's tea shop lost power alongside everything else. Cold air flooded the room rapidly. Customers huddled nervously beneath emergency lights, while distant alarms echoed through the station. Then, suddenly, the cubs reacted. All three stood upright simultaneously. Out. Focused, silver eyes glowing brightly in the darkness. Before anyone understood what happened, the cubs sprinted from the shop, straight into the powerless station. Hours later, security teams discovered something extraordinary. The cubs were guiding stranded civilians through dark maintenance tunnels toward heated emergency shelters. Using instincts humans couldn't explain. Finding trapped children, locating injured workers, even detecting failing life support conduits before scanners identified them. The same predators everyone feared spent the entire blackout saving lives, and every single rescue path eventually led back to one place, Mira's tea shop, because the cubs trusted it, trusted her, and wanted others safe there too. After that, nobody on Eryndor called them monsters anymore. The cubs became symbols across the protectors, guardians. Even security officers started bringing them treats occasionally, though Commander Vale insisted, officially, that this behavior remained completely unprofessional. The smallest cub still slept in Mira's lap during evening hours anyway. So clearly nobody enforced the rule very hard. Months later, a Khelar diplomatic vessel finally arrived at Eryndor Station. And with it came full-grown Khelar warriors, towering, silent, intimidating enough to terrify entire docking bays. The station held its breath, waiting for confrontation. Instead, the warriors entered Mira's tea shop quietly, then stopped, watching the cubs peacefully asleep around the human woman. One massive Khelar stepped forward slowly, silver eyes studying Mira carefully. "You protected them," he said finally. Mira looked around at the sleeping cubs. "I gave them somewhere warm." The warrior remained silent a long moment. Then, very carefully, he bowed his head, a gesture of enormous respect among Khelar. "Then our people owe you a life debt." Mira nearly dropped her teacup. "I'm sorry, you're what?" The cubs woke up immediately afterward and tackled her affectionately before explanations could continue, which honestly summarized Mira's life perfectly at that point. And somewhere across the stars, the story spread, the story of how one human woman changed relations with an entire predator species. Not through war, not through politics, not through power, but through one warm cup of tea and a small act of kindness offered to frightened cubs who desperately needed somewhere safe to belong.